and George Henry Thomas in other theatres of war. General Grant broke through Lee's trenches and the Union Army captured Richmond, Virginia in April 1865. Lee surrendered his depleted forces to Grand Appomattox, and pardon my pronunciation, as the Confederacy collapsed, and most historians have now hailed Grant's military genius. So here we have General Stonewall Jackson. That's a wee illustration of the Battle of Bull Run. General Thomas Stonewall Jackson's ancestral home is in Ballinary, Berkshire, County Armagh. So it's near the shore of Loch Ness. Indeed, a plaque was unveiled by United States Consul General in 1968. It states that this was the birthplace of John Jackson, great-grandfather of Thomas Stonewall Jackson. Today there are reportedly more Jacksons living in this part of County Armagh than any other region of Northern Ireland. So, Loch Ness. So between late 1860 and early 1861, I'll just talk a bit about the background to Stonewall Jackson. In several southern US states declared their independence as state of the Union. It was Jackson's desire initially that Virginia, his home state, would stay in the Union. When Virginia seceded spring 1861, Jackson showed his support for the Confederacy, choosing to side with his state over the national government. So when the war broke out, he was commissioned a colonel in the Confederate Army. He led a detachment of Virginia military cadets, Institute cadets, at the Battle of Lexington to Richmond to defend the Confederate flank. This led to command of the Virginia forces at Harper's Ferry and placed them in the front line. So Jackson distinguished himself at the Battle of Bull Run in July 1861, and he was instrumental in inflicting a crushing defeat on the Union Army. The bravery was such that General Bernard E. Bee, commander of the South Carolina Confederacy, exclaimed, "There he stands like a stone wall, rally behind the Virginians." General Bee would die in this battle, but the Stonewall tribute would become legend. In the bloody Battle of Antietam, against terrible odds, Jackson managed to hold his Confederate troops in defensive position until General Robert E. Lee could withdraw his troops safely across the Potomac River. In October 1862, General Lee reorganised his Army of Virginia into two corps. After being promoted to Lieutenant General, Jackson took command of the Second Corps, leading them to a decisive victory at the Battle of Fredericksburg. Stonewall Jackson achieved spectacular success at the Battle of Chancellorsville, and in May 1863 he routed General John Hooker's army and caused the Union Army of the Potomac serious losses. So on May 2nd, 1863, Jackson was accidentally shot by men of the 18th North Carolina Infantry Regiment, in which I suppose in modern parlance would be termed a friendly fire incident. He died on 10th of May, aged 39, and his last words are reported to have been, "Let us cross the river and rest under the shade of the trees." So in some ways it's very serene terms, but also these words underline his abiding Christian faith. He's often reported to people always comment that he never had any fear, and I think his faith was something that really kept him strong at all times. So even General Robert E. Lee commented, "I know not how to replace him," and even President Lincoln described him as a very brave soldier, even though they were on opposing sides. So there's other American Civil War generals who had Scots, Irish, Ulster connections. On the Union Army, these include George McClellan, Irvin McDowell, Ambrose Burnside, David Gregg, Philip Sheridan, James Shields. And in the Confederate Army, Joseph Johnson, Albert Johnson, Daniel Donaldson, Leonidas Polk, and famed cavalry commander Jeb Stuart. So this is Mulligan's Irish Brigade. Excuse me. So Mulligan's Irish. James A. Mulligan was colonel of the 23rd Illinois Volunteer Infantry Regiment of the Union Army during the Civil War. 20th February 1865, the United States Senate confirmed a posthumous award to Colonel Mulligan to the rank Brigadier General of US Volunteers, to rank from the 23rd of July 1861, the day before he was mortally wounded at the Second Battle of Kernstown in Winchester, Virginia. So on July 24th, 1864, so a quick poster from Mulligan's Brigade calling up men going to fight. The veterans do give the money, and if they're called up, if they're not used for the 3 years, a 3-year term, they still get the full payment. So if you fought in the Union Army before Mulligan's Brigade's been formed, it's quite appealing, I think, to a lot of people to go back and fight again. James A. Mulligan. So a large Confederate force attacked Mulligan's 1,800 soldiers from the church in Kernstown, Winchester, Virginia. Mulligan's men fought bravely, but devastating Confederate flank tanks from the east and west encompassed Mulligan's small force, and he ordered his troops to withdraw. Confederate snipers managed to hit Mulligan. His troops endeavoured to carry him to safety, but came under heavy fire, concentrated fire from the Confederates. Aware of the danger his troops faced, Mulligan issued his famous order, "Lay me down and save the flag." His men reluctantly agreed. Confederates captured Mulligan and carried the mortally wounded colonel into a nearby home where he died 2 days later. This is Cotton. So that's the original illustration of the Anaconda Plan, which was to completely blockade the south. So they couldn't get cotton out. They couldn't pay to get raw materials with that cotton in. And though Scott's great plan, the Anaconda Plan, wasn't strictly the one that they adopted, by capturing the Mississippi River and effectively keeping the South in, it pretty much was what actually happened. It wasn't thinking at all times to starve the South into submission, and cotton being the #1 export, the #1 money earner for the South. They were denied foreign markets to buy foreign goods, to buy war materials, essentially. So a quotation here, this is our friend Robert Campbell, again, Georgia, to W.J.C. Allen, Belfast, 14th January 1863. Again, talking about the present 400,000 bales. W.J.C. Allen is American with interest in cotton in and about Augusta. He says they're interested in most of it. Will protect from the torture of either party, whether federal or Confederate. There's no disposition on the part of the citizens to burn their own property in the event of Augusta falling. So this is trying to defend the cotton because it's seen as a lifeline. It's seen as it can generate money for the South. Although it's blockaded by Union boats, there are still Confederate boats getting out, breaking the blockade. So the reality of war. So this is a letter from John Martin of Dublin to Father Kennedy in Dublin, 1st of August 1864. And again, writing about by 1864 the sacrifices, devastation caused to every state that's been involved in it. And it's quite a poignant letter, this. He writes the battles, the grand campaigns, and the impression that the Confederate losses have been very inferior to those of the Yankees. So you still have that southern pride that we whipped them, we didn't lose as many, we're better. And that was something that prevailed in the South. A feeling of superiority, being better fighters, being braver men. But as that many of the finest young men of Richmond had fallen, and then there's a very poignant line, of course there's no shirking from whatever sacrifice is required. So still a kind of willingness to see it through. This is a Caldwell letter, which is quite interesting. This is Robert Caldwell in North Carolina writing to a cousin in Donegal, County Tyrone. And again it says, been in the army and seen enough the death of a man who served in 17 battles and skirmishes in this war, and saw about 500,000 men killed and twice as many wounded. I mean, the figures are probably a bit of license there, but dear cousin, mind your place while you have it, and don't be foolish to be advised to come to this country. So what's unusual for a letter to Ireland, which has always been endorsing immigration to America, this is a letter saying, don't come here. It's like what Robert has witnessed at these battles is probably akin to hell on earth, and you don't want to be emigrating here. The place is in such turmoil and devastation. So the South surrenders. So our friend again, Robert Campbell, writing W.J.C. Allen, mentions that Columbus taken by the army, General Lee had surrendered, and surrendered Johnson and Sherman soon followed. And last Sunday the US flag was again displayed in our city at the arsenal by federal troops. So again we can see that it's all over. The end of the war, 1865. This is William Hill, Abbeville, South Carolina, to brother David Hill in Ballymena, County Antrim. And this is interesting, it's talking about the occupation of the South, which is still a contentious issue. The US government called it the reconstruction of the South, but some people in the South to this day would prevail that it was an occupation, it was a further devastation. Now, the quotation is interesting. The closer military authority, countries under martial law, we have guarded Yankee soldiers now, we will keep us in subjection, composed of 50 men. Present guard are white men, so they've changed, a great many of whom are Irish. Their predecessors were Negroes, whose domineering conduct so exasperated the people that it was best thought by authorities to remove them. So, very inflammatory for a lot of southern citizens having that previous armed detachment guarding their town. So the soldiers now behave themselves with considerable decorum. So this is the aftermath. So the ruins of Richmond and Virginia. Here's the horses in the foreground. I haven't quite found out who they belong to. But that is something you could see a contemporary, or something to do with like the First World War. It could be like the Battle of Ypres in 1915, such as the devastation. And yet that's in Richmond, the South, 15th of June 1865. It's completely ruined. So again, a letter to WJC Allen of Belfast from Robert Campbell, and saying under military rule, great change has progressed peacefully. How would it be or will be when the state resumes her position and rights as a member of the US is uncertain, but we hope for the best. We have an example of Haiti as a warning not to attempt to restore slavery. Haiti is an independent black community established in North Carolina after the war, so there really is no going back. That is it. So again, when you're looking at the American Civil War and slavery, and I hope I've ran through the archives, letters, illustrations that I found, talking about first-hand accounts regarding slavery, the coming of the war, the battles, a look at the Irish and Ulster Scots, figures with background of the conflict and the effects of the ending of slavery and the effects of the war at the end of the South. So I hope we've covered that. And again, it was just research that I did myself. So we don't have a lot of American Civil War material in PRONI, but what the stuff that we do is of supreme interest. It does give you these little windows and voices from the past and with eyewitness accounts of very tumultuous events. But I think when you're talking about slavery in the American Civil War, there's only really one person who can have the last word, and that would have to be Mr. Lincoln. So, those who deny freedom to others deserve it not for themselves. And I guess that would have to be the final word on the American Civil War and slavery. Just a wee quick thing at the end. If you like to go into PRONI to look at our archives, please feel free. You can word search, if you have reference numbers on our catalogue or our e-catalogue, you can browse the American Civil War. Other conflicts, other stories are all held here. So thanks for your time.